Today, we're going to have a look at some of the common mistakes that I've seen in section two, as well as in my experience as a general English tutor for essay writing. And I've included them because essay writing and section two GAMSAT they share a lot of similarities, especially when you're adopting that argumentative approach in explaining and communicating your reasoning and ideas. So we're going to have a look at what the mistakes are, as well as provide some solutions and strategies to address or prevent them. So let's get into it. So there are 5 common mistakes, and of course, these are not the only kinds of mistakes, but they are frequent enough such that I decided to make this presentation and explain how to actually identify and how to address them. And we'll sort of get into a bit more detail with each of them very shortly. But the first one, importance and not substance. What exactly do I mean by this? So this is really where you might find when you're reading your own essays, you find yourself talking about, oh, it is important to do A, it is important to do B, something along the lines of that. And what that sort of often manifests as is essentially you're just saying something is important without actually telling me why, without actually, I suppose, reinforcing or supporting your claims of why it is important. So that's what I mean by, in this mistake, importance and effect without substance, because the substance part is the most important thing that you want to convey. There's no point saying something is important without actually telling me why is it important? How does it relate to your argument overall? So we have some examples here. Excessive consumerism can negatively impact an individual's mental health and overall well-being. It is therefore important to recognize when it is beneficial to relinquish the pursuit for success. Individuals can enjoy benefits when they support the interest of other people. So can you see how we're talking about importance a lot and also the effect of something without being actually specific enough? In the first sentence, excessive consumerism can negatively impact. So the negatively impact is, I suppose, a mistake in that it is not specific enough. It is not detailed enough, right? Negatively impact in what way? How does it actually impact an individual's mental health and overall well-being? That's an avenue, an opportunity to further expand your idea here. It is therefore important to recognize when it is beneficial to relinquish the pursuit for success. So therefore important to recognize. Why is it important to recognize? Right? So that's another question that will come to the mind of a reader when they're looking at this sentence. And yes, I know it's a sentence in isolation, but and that you might explain it in the next sentence. But why have this particular sentence just as it is when you could just be more specific, be more detailed, and have substance rather than just importance and effect? Same thing here. Individuals can enjoy benefits when they support the interests of other people. What benefits specifically? And the reason why I'm saying this is because you need to be efficient in your writing. You don't have a lot of time. Every sentence must carry its worth and be worth the time and energy that you put into crafting it. And because of this, anything that talks about importance and effect, you have to limit it as much as possible. And in doing so, you want to ensure that you are, I suppose, directly just telling me why is it important, what the actual effect is. All right. So now let's have a look at how we can actually address this. So how do we actually do it? It's quite simple. We directly specify the idea. And so I know it sounds like a rather overly simplistic and obvious thing to do, but it's actually quite hard because more oftentimes than not, we fall into this habit of talking about impact, talking about importance. But you have to develop this attitude that whenever you see yourself write the words importance or impact, stop yourself. Correct that trap of falling into those kinds of tendencies and ask yourself, what do I actually want to say? What am I actually trying to say? So excessive consumerism and can negatively impact. Now, remember when I said, well, what does it actually mean? How does it actually negatively impact an individual's mental health and well-being? We come up with excessive consumerism commits an individual to an emotional dependency on material goods, which competes with other psychological needs. So can you see how that's incredibly more detailed and gives the reader a bit better understanding of what you're trying to say? Because negative impact is essentially here the emotional dependency on material goods. We've actually specified what the negative impact is. And not only that, you can see how, in terms of, if you visualize the distance that you cover, metaphorical distance that you cover with a sentence, you'll note that this sentence, the one on the left, covers far less ground than the one on the right, because the sentence on the right has introduced another idea for which you can advance your thinking, advance your reasoning, which is the emotional dependency on material goods in just one sentence. Whereas if you were to talk about this, you might need another sentence on top of the one on the left. That makes sense. So you're being more efficient, more effective, and you're traveling further and gaining more benefit I guess what you're saying is gaining more bang for your buck with this kind of approach in terms of directly specifying the idea. And we can see the same thing for the other sentences here. The pursuit of success should be abandoned when its costs and risks outweigh the expected benefits. So this is a direct specification of, well, why is it important to recognize when it is beneficial? And how do we actually recognize when it is beneficial as well? Well, here we change it to the pursuit of success should be abandoned when its costs and risks outweigh the expected benefits. So we've specified, well, when it is beneficial. And not directly the importance of it, but we've now added more detail. And of course, like before, we've traveled further in terms of our ideological distance. Now, last one, individuals can enjoy benefits when they support the interests of other people. Individuals can strengthen their interpersonal relationships and experience fulfillment by supporting the interests of others. So in the left sentence, we've focused and expanded on what benefits are there. What are the actual benefits specifically? Well, specifically, it is the strengthening of interpersonal relationships and the experience of fulfillment. Okay, so I hope that sort of makes sense because there's a very common issue and it might seem trivial, but if you're able to overcome this and I suppose escape that tendency to always talk about importance and always talk about benefits, consequences, you will go much further in the explanation and communication of your ideas and achieve much more based on the effort and the energy and the resources you commit to writing an essay. Moving on, superficial exploration. Now, it's very similar to the first mistake, but in a way, it's a more broader macroscopic overview of that first mistake that we went through by the way of looking at the paragraph as a whole in terms of where exactly are we going with this idea. And it'll make a bit more sense when I show you this example. Individuals can enjoy benefits when they support the interests of other peoples. The interests of other peoples include the objectives that they plan to accomplish in life. My bad. Communities are built around people, and when they are unable to pursue their aspirations, the neighborhood suffers as a whole. Individuals who cannot pursue their interests may experience pain and suffering. Therefore, it is important to ensure that everyone can pursue their life interests as this grants them satisfaction. So, what are your thoughts on this paragraph before I continue? Keeping in mind that the theme is a superficial exploration. So, what the issue here is, well, of course, it's about the superficial exploration, but what features points us towards superficial exploration? And I would say here is that when you compare each sentence with the paragraph as a whole, is there any kind of, I suppose, unity? Is there any kind of integration under a particular theme or the main idea of a paragraph? And I'd be inclined to say no. Keeping in mind that this paragraph or any paragraph, the topic sentence is essentially the signposting statement of what your whole body paragraph is going to talk about. And here, individuals can enjoy benefits when they support the interests of other peoples. So we're really looking for an indication of, well, what kind of benefits? How are they going to support other people? And, how does this all work? How do they gain benefits? And is that what we see in the rest of the paragraph? So in the next sentence, we have a definition of, what the interests of other people might mean, which is fine. And then the third sentence, communities are built around people when they are unable to pursue their aspirations, neighborhood suffers as a whole. That sounds like the consequences of not supporting the interests of other people. And it doesn't really sound like they're talking about the benefits of supporting other people. Instead, they're talking about the consequences, which is valid, but it is superficial because you're not expanding on the signposting statement that you should have. Individuals who cannot pursue their interests may experience pain and suffering. Okay, sure, but it's a peripheral idea. You're not directly engaging with this idea of gaining benefits from supporting the interests of other people. Therefore, it is important. So once again, this integrates that issue that we had in the first previously, which is, just talking about importance, just talking about effect without being specific. So there's a lot of mistakes here, but overall, as a paragraph, as a whole, there is superficial exploration because this signposting statement, this topic sentence has not been respected, has not been engaged with. So then let's have a look at how we can fix this. So always ask yourself in any body paragraph, where am I going? Where am I traveling from an ideological perspective? What am I starting with and what am I trying to end with? All right, you have to keep that in your mind. All right, a body paragraph is not something where you can just throw down all of the explanation, all of the detail in an unstructured way, but you always must respect the topic sentence as the foundations of the paragraph itself. Extend your reasoning from the first sentence of the paragraph. And that's how you get this linear progression of logic. So let's have a look at this adjusted paragraph. Individuals can strengthen their interpersonal relationship and experience fulfillment by supporting the interest of others. By committing physical or social resources in support of another's efforts, a recognizable display of respect and confidence is impressed upon the recipient. This reinforces the motivations of the recipient and better positions them to accomplish their goals. In doing so, the eventual experience of success by others grants the individual a sense of shared fulfillment in recognizing the fruitfulness of their own contributions. So you can see that each sentence plays a role. It extends the thinking, extends the reasoning offered by that very first topic sentence. And this is what we want. We want to consider the path of logic, the ideological path of where are we going with this idea, okay? And this is a key principle in allowing you to ensure that each body paragraph is relevant, is direct, and reinforces an overall argument stipulated by the topic sentence. So the next common mistake that I see is often in a body paragraph as a whole, there's often a tendency to try and do as much as possible in terms of explaining all of these different concepts. But in doing so, you sacrifice depth. And this is related to the previous, the mistake that we've just talked about as well. And we'll have an example here. Failure builds the important skills on and characteristics of resilience, humility, flexibility, innovation, and motivation. Rather than dwelling on failure, one should recognize the valuable opportunity for the examination of errors to personal growth. Resilience to failure is important for continuing success in life because it strengthens one's motivation. However, this can only be achieved by demonstrating humility and recognizing the nature of one's mistakes. Flexibility and creativity are also important lessons that derive from failure. So before I go and explain what's wrong with this, can you see what the actual issue is? Thinking about that previous mistake where I explained that in a body paragraph, we want to have or focus on an idea that's signposted by the topic statement and expanded upon as much as possible in a coherent manner. So the mistake here is, well, of course, the title gives it away, is that you're taking on too much of a challenge or too much of, I suppose, too many things. So you see here, the important skills and characteristics of resilience, humility, flexibility, innovation, and motivation. That is way too much, right? You don't have enough time nor energy to dedicate so many sentences to explaining all of them succinctly, all of them in detail, because they're all very disconnected concepts. Yes, they're all skills and characteristics, but each of them, they contain different ideas and values that you have to sort of explore in depth, in which you can see that there's really only one sentence each allocated to one or two of these skills or characteristics, and that's too much breadth. And you might be wondering, well, if we don't have breadth, how do we actually show that we can see things broadly? Well, the answer to that is when you have 2 to 3 body paragraphs, those paragraphs in and of itself represents the breadth of your thinking, because each body paragraph represents a different aspect of an overarching thesis or contention. Body paragraph 1 talks about, for example, maybe a sociological perspective. Body paragraph 2 talks about economical perspective. Body paragraph 3 talks about maybe the perspective of a religious or a moral perspective. So that's breadth when you have these different subdomains or sub-aspects of your thesis contention. And because of that, you should restrict how broad you are within the body paragraph itself. So breadth correlates to the different body paragraphs that you have. Depth correlates to what you do within a body paragraph, if that makes sense. So here, the main issue is there is not enough depth. So how do we actually fix this? Restraint and precision so that we can develop our ideas. So like I said before, we focus on really just 1 or 2 key ideas in a single body paragraph. And we can see here, failure builds the important skill of resilience through the effects of invoked negative emotions. I've only picked resilience, nothing else, because what should ideally happen is with all of these things here, they should be their own body paragraphs. So resilience, its own body paragraph, humility, its own body paragraph, and innovation at its own body paragraph. That's depth when you have, that's breadth when you have 3 body paragraphs. And within each body paragraph, you go into detail. You explain what you're actually saying. Failure builds the important skill of resilience. It is the experience of anguish and despondency that sensitizes the individual and demands the active evaluation of one's mindsets and attitudes. These emotions can only be relieved by accepting and reframing individual inadequacies as opportunities for growth and progression. Only then will the individual experience a cathartic release of the intense emotions, and in doing so, mature the development of resilience for future endeavors. So can you see how the rest of this body paragraph it's entirely focused on explaining, well, how does failure build resilience through negative emotions, right? I'm only focused on that particular idea and explaining how that is the case instead of talking about any other skills. And that's what we need to do. We need to restrain ourselves and be precise with our development and where we are going. So keep in mind, in any body paragraph, we want to focus on one key idea only. Now, conventional interpretation, moving now a little bit less away from structure and to a bit more about interpretation of the quotes and stimuli. Conventional interpretation basically refers to, I suppose, the immediate reactions that anybody would have when they see any particular prompt, any particular topic. And that immediate reaction is informed by our experiences and our knowledge and our understanding of the world around us. And it can be difficult to overcome this. And part of why we need to overcome it is because when we're doing section 2, we need to separate ourselves from the pack. We need to, I suppose, distinguish ourselves with the ideas and the conventional, no, with the unconventional interpretation that we can bring to the table. Everybody is going to talk about how we need to save the environment, but can you provide an alternative or a bit more nuanced interpretation of that topic? So let's have a look here. We have a number of topics, but I want us to focus on the highlighted keywords. What are our thoughts or our initial thoughts to those keywords? So in this quote, everything has beauty, but not everyone sees it. What do we think beauty? What do we take beauty as? What do we consider business to be? What do we consider science to be? And stories, what does that mean to us? Think about our initial thoughts and hold that. And so oftentimes when we think about these particular concepts here, we often take what comes to our mind first. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to section 2, it might not be sufficient to give us a strong foundation to write our essays. So what we need to do is to suppress that first knee-jerk reaction and think deeply, actively think a bit more about, well, okay, what else could beauty mean? What else does business represent? If science is this, what else could it be? And this is where we have this idea of suppressing the knee-jerk reaction. We want to broaden and extend our thinking and consider what else could this idea represent. So beauty, I'm sure most of us might have considered physical attractiveness as the initial response. But really, we can also think about the meaning and the connection of two particular concepts, values, or attitudes. And what I mean by this is we see beauty as physical attractiveness, but beauty can also be, I suppose, identified and discovered in certain ideas, certain values, certain attitudes. I know it's rather broad, but you need to see that, you need to, I suppose, separate physical attractiveness from beauty and see it as something beyond that. Business, we can consider a business as not just a profit from the delivery of a service or product, but a business is, I suppose, an idea that represents the contributions of any operation to the community and to the society. So we've now extended that idea and broadened our understanding of what business is. And of course, with science, we all consider science as really the scientific inquiry, having hypotheses, having a particular methodology to approach the search of knowledge, and also finding results. But really, we can think about it broadly and consider science to also represent the meaning of this culture around knowledge and discourse. How does people or communities interact with knowledge? How do they treat knowledge? Is there any skepticism? Is there any reverence to this pursuit of knowledge? Stories. We all know stories have narrative content, but what else? Stories could also point us towards this idea of this transference of knowledge, this intergenerational propagation of learning and knowledge between different, within communities, between generations. And we can also consider that to be the development and change of what's understood and also the change of social norms. So really what's happening here is with any topic, with any idea that you are engaging with, acknowledge what your first instinct is telling you, but also in trying to ensure that you think about your second or your third take of that idea and consider whether or not that's going to be more useful for you in terms of developing an overall idea and an essay. Now, the last mistake I'd like to talk about is the inconsistent macro structure. So I know the pattern is structural mistakes are very common, but this one is also important. And what I mean by this is when we have signposting statements, I've said that before, we need to ensure that parts of our essay correlate with one another. So we take these two statements here, signposting statement 1 and 2, as what we would have in introduction, and then in body paragraph 1, topic sentence, and another topic sentence in body paragraph 2. Now, I want you to look at these sentences and think about what the issue is, remembering that we're talking about the structure between paragraphs and the need for ideas to correlate with one another. So the issue here is, if we look at signposting statement 1, the prioritization of profit in any business is mutually exclusive with positive contributions to society. Examine topic sentence 1, which is the first sentence of any paragraph. By reinvesting profit into improving the quality of the delivered service and goods, businesses can contribute meaningfully to communities. Hopefully, you would have noticed that they're not exactly talking about the same thing. Body paragraph 1, whilst it's on the same topic, it is talking about how businesses contribute to communities, whereas signposting statement 1 talks about how contributions to society cannot occur in the prioritization of profit. And you'll find the same thing in statement 2 and body paragraph 2 topic sense. Changing the objectives of any business requires market and industry shifts that cannot be feasibly attained due to the entrenched influences of globalization. Whereas here, the profit motives of any business can be changed by counteracting the influence of globalization through government subsidy and support. Not exactly talking about the same thing. And this is what I mean by inconsistent macro structure. You might be talking about the same topic, but if we get down to the nitty-gritty of things, you are not exactly talking about the same thing that you said you were. So this is where we really need to be precise. We really need to be careful with ourselves and ensuring that each part of our structure and our essay relates to one another and is consistent with one another. How do we fix this? And the way that we fix this is we want to correlate parts of our structure every now and again, in which we have checkpoints in where we have a look at what we've developed in each paragraph, and also looking at where, I suppose, what we've written for our topic sentence and our signposting statements and compare them. So what do I mean by this? When you've written your introduction and you've finished it, you either would have, I suppose, 2 or 3 signposting statements in the introduction. And when you're then going on to write the body paragraphs, make sure that the first sentence of each body paragraph is cross-checked with those signposting statements. So after you write the first sentence of the first, second, or third body paragraphs, pause, look at the introduction, and see if their ideological contents are corresponding and they match. And what you're going to do is really focus on the direction of those sentences. So if you have a look here, this is how you're going to identify whether or not they are of the same direction. And how we do that is focusing on the key words of, especially in statement 1, we can focus on mutually exclusive, which really changes the direction of where the statement is going. So keywords are those that will, I suppose, alter the overall message, the overall content. And so keywords of mutually exclusive means that we're trying to contrast and explain why this is the case in statement 1, but in topic sentence for body paragraph 1, we're talking about contributing meaningfully to community. So the direction is different here. And same here in statement, signposting statement 2 versus topic sentence, body paragraph 2. Keywords of cannot be feasibly attained does not match this idea of by counteracting the influence of globalization. So signposting statement 2 is talking about an impossibility, right? A challenge or a barrier. But topic sentence 2 for body paragraph 2, topic sentence for body paragraph 2 is talking about a solution. And can you see that when you identify those particular keywords, you're able to relate to the direction. And once you're able to relate to the direction of the sentence, you can tell whether or not they structurally correlate with one another. So to sort of summarize what we went through today, some of the common mistakes that you want to be aware of include unnecessarily stating the importance instead of simply telling me why something is important and what the effects are, Superficially explaining our ideas instead of advancing and developing beyond what's already stated. So superficial exploration. And exploring too many ideas instead of focusing on develop a linear progression of logic. So really focusing on one or two key principles in the body paragraph, engaging with instinctual perspectives and instead of considering broader interpretations. So suppressing our knee-jerk reaction, thinking about what else there is in a quote or a prompt. Exploring ideas without considering its relationship to the rest of the essay in terms of structural correlation. Does each part of my paragraph relate to each other? Just as an aside, the website is now online, and feel free to take a look at some of the different resources I have online on the website, as well as have a look at the different program packages and options available. And this includes all the content that you would learn in terms of the skills-based program, as well as options for one-on-one tutoring or essay marking feedback. And of course, if you have any questions about the content of any YouTube video, feel free to message me.